If you're at the point of watching this video in your search for information, you probably already have your engine torn down to the block. If not, I will post a link in the description below on how to get it to this point so that we can build up from here. Now, yes, the bearing is in there, and we'll cover how to use the puller on that in just a sec. But you're here for the shiny bits. Now, what makes a Duromax different on the 440 is that it has an ARC style bearing in it, which is different than an ARC. We have managed to figure out that it is proprietary to Duromax. And we have run these rods, the stock rod and everything, at 6,200 to 6,400 RPM. We have put roughly 11 hours worth of racing time on this particular engine, and it was going great. And as you can see, there's hardly any major wear there. So that is good. But it's time to start upgrading. We're going to drop out the balance shaft. That saves us almost 2 pounds worth of difference. We're going to upgrade into 55-pound springs. Now, one thing I'll point out here is that it says dual when you order these. It's the outside spring that you use. You don't use the inside ones. So here's your part number. We're going to be running the stock lift extended duration twister cam. So here we go. If we take this and we flip it up, and then we grab our stock cam over here and we put the two of them, whoa, expensive chip out. And we put the two of them side by side, you can see the difference. If I put my finger there so it highlights it. So it is stock height, extended duration. Now, we've got an 8-degree timing key to go with our Honda GX390 flywheel with our starter ring on it. We've already taken and put this on the engine while the crank was in it, and it sits exactly the same height for the ring as the stock flywheel does. Now, one thing that I did note on this, and I'm assuming it's because these teeth are made out of aluminum, is the teeth are wider than stock teeth. But I don't think that's really going to give us any difference here. What will give us a difference is that this is 8 pounds lighter than the stock setup with the charging coil in it. So if we lose 8 pounds there, we lose another 2 pounds here. We're going to be gaining in a high quality spark plug. So this is our torch that was in it, which you can see definitely riched out in the upper part of the RPM. I honestly think that this thing was having issues at somewhere around the 5,800 and up type area. It would kind of go up and down a little bit and have some issues. So therefore, we're going to be swapping out to this auto light, which is what was recommended by NR Racing, which is AR3910X. Bearing removal. 1,000,001 different methods in order to do this. Here's what I would recommend. If you have a bearing like this one, then there's a lip underneath it where it mounts. And what you do is you take a puller with the old-fashioned dent puller tip like this. And you just put a 1/4-inch bolt down through it, and you weld the nut on. And then that way you can drop it down through the bearing and go tunk, 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 tunk around the outside edge of the bearing, and it pops right out. And just so you know, what this is for also is why you have this in your puller kit. What you do is a socket will fit down through part of that, and you take this and you drill it into whatever you need to pull out, and then put that on the end of your puller and give it a yank. So here's a sacrificial grade 2 1/4 inch from Tractor Supply. And what you can do is you can either set it up like this, so you've got a wider area to be able to weld to, or you can set it up like I have this one, so it's got a smaller area that you can weld down inside the lip, and you just take this and you put it inside of here, you weld it, and give it a couple of twacks. And that is what that stupid little thing is for. So if you're buying one of these puller sets, you want to make sure that that is there. A lot of times the Chinesium sets will list this as a dent puller option. Somebody with a bit more knowledge than me should step in on this. But it's interesting, that was already clearanced for the rod, and over here, that was already clearanced out from factory. So that looks pretty good. You can actually still see hash markings at the bottom of it. Up here, not so much, but we're going to run it. I know people are going to ask about NR Racing's triple jet cheater carburetor that I had in another video. What we're going to do is we're going to build up this engine in this video. We're going to stick the known dialed in carburetor on it. We're going to see what happens with this setup, because I'm betting that once we have the higher duration cam in it, that this is probably going to end up lean. But I want to see what happens first before we dive into the $65 triple jet carburetor. Alright, so the first thing in this mess is we need to get the piston swapped over. So if we look at the tail and the arrow, they go the same direction. So what we need to do is we need to get the 18mm clip out of it, which has a little divot right here. And you're going to take a pick. You're going to pull it up and put your finger right on the tip of the pick, preferably without stabbing yourself, but to each their own. And that way, as you pull it up, you can work it out a little bit at a time and get it out of there. And there's no good way to film this. See, once it's at this point, now I can grab onto it and just twist it, and it pops out. Now you can order those. They're 18mm. So we push this right here, and that pops that out. And now we can set that aside. Now, for those that are interested, I am going to build a GX390 using almost all of the leftover Duromax parts, just to prove the fact that everything will fit. Now, while I was babbling at you, I forgot which direction things go. So we're going to pick up our piston, we're going to turn it, we're going to see that the arrow is that direction. So therefore we know the tail needs to go the direction that the arrow was in. So now we should be able to slide that in, unless I got the side with the clip. Nope, that goes in. Now, assembly lube, 30 weight oil, whatever it is that you feel works for you. I just took it out of there and it was all lubed up and everything, so I'm not overly worried about it. So, arrow, down, tail, arrow, push in. And working it back and forth a little bit helps. Now, getting the clip back in is the opposite of removal. You're going to take one little edge, you're going to work it down in next to here so that it clips down and around as you push it in. Again, no real way to show this other than just plain that's what you do. So you're going to twist it into and then push it down. And it just is one of those things where you just got to feel it out. And if you lose one, well, 18 millimeter, go order one. There we go. Oh, I missed. Let's try it again. If anybody has tips on how to do this, always willing to see comments that have how-to tips. Because everybody's got their own little trick. And this time we're going to try the idea of pushing in just a little bit at a time, kind of like installing a tire on a rim. And there we go. So it took 2 different attempts with 2 different methods in order to get that on there. So now we need that side going down. We've got our big giant piston ring clamp here. And, oh, I forgot to go and put oil on the inside of this, so let's do that. Let's put some oil on the inside. So we've got our VR1 zinc oil here. There we go. Come back over here. Make sure to give a shout out to John for doing a good job with the camera. We made sure that our rings are oriented correctly. We never ended up removing the rings, so I'm not worried about whether they're the right direction, because unless somebody decided to mess with them, which nobody did, should be all set. Okay, let's get this on here. I am not an engine builder. I'm actually very uncomfortable usually with filming engine builds because it's not something that I like to do. So John, there we go. So next, this comes to the irritating part to get on film. So John's going to look down through, and we're going to see right here where we got to get that lined up as we put the piston in. Okay, John? So we're going to take that, putting it in, making sure that the arrow is facing down. And of course it's going to fight me. There we go. Now we need to make sure this is flat against everything before we try and move anything, because this is how things get screwed up. You've got to be 3 places at once. You've got to be tapping it, you've got to be holding the connecting rod up, and you've got to be making sure that the ring clamp stays flat. There we go. There. Now I can rotate that around, get my bolts put in, my cap on the other end, and 26 foot-pounds. Before we go to install the cam, I just wanted to show you guys the pre-clearance that's in the Duromax block right there. What I'm doing, and then we'll go from there. So go ahead and say when you're started.
Already started when you said start.
Oh, already started when I said start. Got this all figured out. Alright, so in between starting film and everything else, we've got the cam here. which we actually discovered is almost an entire half an ounce lighter than the stock Duromax cam. So we've got cam and lifters here. We're going to make sure to oil these up and then put them in where they go. Now this is one of those situations where there is no nice way to film this, so we're going to try, but bear with us. So on your cam is going to be a dot right here, and on your crank is going to be a dot right here, which is really hard to make out. Just trust me, it's there, you'll find it. So what you have to do is slide your lifters in, and the oil helps A, with making sure they're lubed, and B, causing them to get stuck by suction up inside of the lifter hole. Now, what you got to do is put your cam in to the back hole, and then if you look right here, we need to rotate this to match the one that's going to be on here. So as we bring this around, we should be able to find the one that's on here, right there. And the teeth cut this way, so you have to be off by one tooth as you do it. And like I said, there's just no, whoops, that was almost in one tooth too many. Right like that. Now we can see the dot there, and we can see the dot here. Nope, got it blinded. We got dot there, and the dot here. And thank you, Miss Jessie, for doing the filming.
You're welcome.
We got the side cover all buttoned up with the twister cam on the inside and our connecting rod. And now it's time to do the flywheel. The age-old argument of lapping valve compound to get the flywheel put on and seat it. Here's the argument nobody ever decides to talk about. A stock flywheel, the inside of it has a taper like this. This is cut out from a giant block of aluminum. And so they do a pretty good job of putting the taper in. But what you're going to feel is there's going to be a rim on the inside. That's because the taper in an ARC flywheel looks more like this. Here's my argument. The thing is, if you lap that out, then it's going to sit further down on the shaft. So what I did was I double checked that as it is, it sits where this starter expects for a timing engagement. Now, if you were dealing with a pull start, it would never matter. But if I lap this out, the more that I lap that, the lower in it's going to sit the timing gear to hit this starter gear. So that's something to consider while you're building this. We've got our upgrade springs here. We've got a press right here. I'm curious whether I can foam press these in. So all you do is grab some packing foam and cut a piece that sits in where the valves are. And then that way you can push down. You can use like an oxygen sensor socket or whatever it is yours of choice is. And we're going to fish those catches out of there just like that. So there's the stock one. And as you can see, they look very close. That's why this is a cheater stock build. Because this is pretty much the strongest you can get before you run into a double. Now, question is, can I manage to press that on the foam? Nope, didn't get it. Alright, we tried twice. I don't want to ruin anything. So we're going to press it in with the clamp. Here we go. So there is stock versus upgrade for the cheater springs. Now, if I sit here and I try and squish this versus I try and squish this. So we've got our cap set up with our lockers in there. And we're going to try to press it on. This time without getting my head in the middle of everything. There we go. Cheap Chinese clamp later. We got it down in there. Now we're going to do the other one. Off camera, because it's a battle. We got our head gasket from NR Racing on there. We're double checking exactly what we need to torque down the head studs to. Head bolts, I mean. And this is the chart that's available right directly from Honda that every YouTuber has in the background that they're always quoting all the information from. If you've ever been watching a YouTuber doing a how-to video on one of the Honda engines and they keep looking off to the side and then telling the camera something, there's probably a 9.5 out of 10 chance that this is what they're looking at. I'll post a link for you to be able to download it. One of the #1 things is how to tune in a governor if you're dealing with that. But you guys get the idea. I think the intake valve was a little bit too tight, so we loosened it up a little bit. No choke. Let's see if it'll kick over now. Got a nice new filter to strap on there because I'm pretty sure we got our mileage out of that. I was able to buy these pretty decently cheap. I'll post a link down below. But yeah, we've got aluminum bar here. We've got some skateboard wheels, some other hardware. We're going to see if we can build a better wheelie bar on this thing. But for now, let's put this on and see if it quits leaning out and being stupid. That right there is what sadness looks like. I'm going to put the stock key in after I lap that a little bit, and we'll try it from there. Stock timing key. We're going to release the choke a little bit just to make it easier on it. And no choke. I would say that was a lot happier. Now let's fire it up once more. Let off the clutch. I'll take that.